Welcome to the Jill on Money Show. It is Wednesday, March 9th. And man, has it been a 2-day period of a lot of crazy market action. The news cycle has been all over the place. So I want to get to a couple of things. I've done 2 different things for my friends at CBS on Tuesday, and both of them are important. So I want to deal with that first. So number one is we now know that President Biden has essentially shut down the importation of Russian energy products. So crude oil and coal and any petroleum product, no go. The ban is now in place. Now, it sort of was seen as somewhat symbolic. The United States only imports 8% of crude and refined products, but oil's priced globally, and we're going to talk about that. Let's do this. So I was on a special report with Gayle King right after President Biden made this announcement. So cue the audio, Mark.
71% of Americans support a ban on Russian oil, even if it leads to higher gas prices. CBS News business analyst Jill Schlesinger is with us. Jill, what does this mean in terms of the cost? The president just mentioned that the cost has already gone up 72%.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Yeah, we see 72 cents is really where we were a month ago. Prices were already high. It is a global market, so the president was really taking pains to remind everybody about that. Look, the U.S. does not take in so much from Russia. It's 8% of crude oil and other refined products. It doesn't seem like a lot, but taking that offline also means that there is some worrying about, will prices go higher? Will there be new actions in Europe? And that means the entire global oil market is under pressure. Just now, we're seeing another 7% rise in the price of crude oil, and we are closing in on that $140 a barrel that we saw back in 2008. So crude oil is used as about, let's say, 50% of the cost of a gallon of gas is derived from crude oil. So as the price of crude goes up, so too will gas prices. I speak to a lot of economists who say this is an unfortunate outgrowth of this terrible conflict. Obviously, the conflict terrible on the ground. Here in the economy, it's going to hurt ordinary Americans.
What do you make of the results of the poll that say 71% say I'm willing to pay extra money?
Well, I think that many people, when thinking about defending democracy and feeling like there's an aggressor in Putin, that you want to say that. But it doesn't mean we don't complain to our friends about gas prices being higher. And we also have to remember, in a lot of this country, people are reliant on their cars to get to work. We are seeing the labor market open up. We are seeing the economy open up after COVID. This is the moment where we really thought that things would be better. And unfortunately, what we are seeing is that people have to absorb these higher prices. And maybe it's actually easier to absorb it knowing you're doing it for democracy rather than just saying the supply chain. But it is going to get worse for American drivers and consumer of energy before it gets better.
Okay, a couple of things to just keep in mind. This is just the United States. And I also think it's important to say that Europe is not likely to do this anytime soon. Remember, Europe imports about 40% of its natural gas from Russia, 25% of its oil. That's a big number, and it would be very difficult to replace that. We also have to remember, I got this question a lot over the last couple of days, that yes, the United States is the biggest oil producer in the world, followed by Saudi Arabia and then Russia. But we're also the biggest consumer of oil. That's why we actually have to take in oil from other places. So I think that's important. The other thing that's important is this is not a story actually about fracking, because, you know, U.S. producers could have been drilling this whole period for the last 2 years, but producers in the United States got hammered amid COVID when the price of oil went down. And when the price started to rise again, the investor community did not actually want them to put money out there and get more oil out of the ground. What they wanted them to do was get dividends. So a lot of the fracking community it's not contending with some strange and arcane rules. It's contending with the investor pressure to deliver profits. And if you can't deliver profits on higher oil because you haven't gotten it out of the ground at lower levels, you do it through dividends. So don't complain about bad rules being in place. Fracking is simply choosing capitalism over democracy, if you want to be cynical, or just, they're doing their job. They're running their businesses in the way they think is best for their shareholders. Meanwhile, Yes, we are at new highs in the price of gas. Tuesday morning, we woke up, AAA said $4.17 a gallon for regular gas. It's up 72 cents from a month ago, $1.40 from a year ago. The previous high was in 2008, and it's a big number, okay? However, in this period of time, I think it's important to stop complaining so much about the things that we cannot control and maybe focus on the things that we can control. And also, maybe before we start freaking out about the price at the pump, we think about what's really going on the ground in Ukraine. And I know for some of you listening, the higher prices, it is a hardship. But for many of you, I know that it just bums you out. It's not a hardship. So if it's not a hardship, let's stop talking about it so much, okay? Interestingly, I was actually on CBS Mornings before this announcement occurred, and the focus of this segment was to first start and talk about markets, which were completely insane on Monday and were equally as insane yesterday. Because on Monday, we saw a 3% drop on the S&P 500. The S&P 500 down 13% from its record. It was the worst day of the year for the S&P 500. The Dow fell into correction territory, which was down 11% from its recent record. And the Nasdaq went into bear market territory, down 21% from its November high. So Monday was a pretty rotten day. And then yesterday, Tuesday, it wasn't so rotten if you just look at the numbers, but the volatility was insane. The Dow had like 800-point swing. It closed lower. The Nasdaq at one point was up by 2.5%, then was down by 1.5%. So all the stock market indexes closed a little lower. It really didn't tell the story. Crude oil did close at around $125 a barrel. That's a 14-year high. All the commodities, the whole complex has just gone bananas. Meanwhile, we did begin the segment. I was on with my colleague, Nate Burleson, and we began the segment just about what you should do. And you know the answer to that. You don't do much. But we also went into what you should do if you wish to try to do something good out there for the people of Ukraine. A lot of really interesting things that are happening in that world. And I just would be remiss if I didn't say, like, let's kind of not go crazy and not get so angry and take a collective deep breath and try to make sure that we are nice to each other. Okay. So anyway, here's some nice stuff. Check it out. This is me and Nate Burleson yesterday morning on CBS Mornings.
Many of you may be wondering how to help people in Ukraine and refugees from other countries as well. One surprising effort, using Airbnbs to send money directly to the people in Ukraine. Airbnb says more than 61,000 nights were booked in Ukraine on March 2nd and 3rd. Now, Airbnb is not taking fees from that, so they're not making money off the bookings. CBS News business analyst Jill Schlesinger joins us right now. Good morning.
Good morning.
I want to talk about that in a second, but let's talk about the stocks. They tumbled and they took a sharp drop off.
Yeah, it was a bad day, really bad day. Oil went to $20 a barrel. This is really concerning to many investors. They think people are going to stop spending money broadly in the economy, could cause a recession. Really bad day. Worst day for the S&P 500 this year. S&P and the Dow are now both in correction, down more than 10%. And the Nasdaq's actually in a bear market, down more than 20%, down 21%. But look, you got a portfolio, you got a game plan, stick to it. Let's not take any new actions. Try to just take a deep breath.
Don't panic is what you're saying.
Indeed.
Okay. I love hearing that from you. Now, what about some other grassroots efforts where people can give? Because that's what's on our heart right now.
Absolutely. You know, the Airbnb effort's so interesting. Started online, really was like almost a crowdsourcing. Great idea. Yeah. We also see that Uber did something really interesting. Really? Uber has basically said we're going to give free rides to people who are at the Ukrainian-Polish border. And we're going to give those rides to folks who want to go deeper into Poland. They're helping relief workers there as well. So free rides through Uber, and Uber users here in the U.S. can give through the app. Etsy said no fees for people who are selling stuff who are based in the Ukraine. A lot of people on Etsy actually buying some items from folks in Ukraine to help them out.
I heard something about the vice prime minister of Ukraine encouraging people to give in crypto. I hear crypto, I think you could be scammed.
Yes, this is really interesting because he put a tweet out and they got a lot of response, 100,000 donations, more than $54 million that was raised very quickly. This is great if someone who's owned crypto for a long time and has
knows what they're doing.
Right, and if you've got embedded gains. But you're right, scams do exist. And
it's unfortunate when stuff like this happens, scammers come out, right?
Absolutely. The FTC just sent out a warning, as a matter of fact. They said if you've got an organization, make sure it's legit. You can just actually Google, do a search and say the name of the organization plus scam, and then you can see a little bit more information from maybe Charity Navigator or the Better Business Bureau Wise Giving Alliance.
Thank you for letting us know the deal, Jill.
Okay, so if you do want to give to the efforts in Ukraine, some of the legitimate organizations where you can donate, the International Red Cross, CARE, the International Humanitarian Group. They're providing food and water and other items to families who are fleeing the violence in Ukraine. Doctors Without Borders, already on the ground in Ukraine. They are seeking ways to respond to the medical and humanitarian needs as the conflict evolves. The International Medical Corps, I didn't know much about this. I looked into this. This is a first responders organization. They've got teams inside Ukraine and in the surrounding regions to offer medical and mental health services. Don't forget, before you give, check to see if your company does any matching. A lot of big companies stepping up their efforts. So I know these are really strange times. Remember that this show, the daily format of this show, was born of crazy times, and we are sticking with it. So if you have a question, please go to the website, JillOnMoney.com, click the Contact Us button. We will get your note. Okay. Put your hands metaphorically on someone's back. Say a nice thing to somebody. Everyone is stressed out by this whole situation. Thank you so much for listening. Grit, growth, grace, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.